Afternoon, a 9 a.m. Pacific, and today I'm joined with David, better known as the Workday Sharing Guy. Also joining us is Denise, Logan, and we have some special guests today. Welcome to the Sharing Show.
Thanks, Kane. Can you tell us a little bit more about Zoom?
Absolutely. So we'd like to make sure that everybody's being interactive. So at the bottom of the Zoom session, you should see a chat icon. If you can go in there and click on chat and interact with everybody on the show, make sure you select the everyone. And so everybody gets to see your questions or feedback or messages. And today we're going to have a fantastic show, I can tell. So I'm going to pass this over to you guys. Take it away.
Okay, before we go into this morning's Kahoot, I'm going to interrupt briefly with an example of using the chat, and I've added into the agenda a pool, which is something I wanted to do around the time. This is our 9th episode of the Sharing Show, and sometime in these last 9 weeks, early on I was thinking we might do a pool to see who would pick the day in which the Workday stock actually broke 200. And one day I looked, we had only done a few shows, I think, and actually Workday stock hit exactly 200. So it was a close call. I'm not looking right now. I don't think Workday has broke through 200 today, but go into the chat. We're doing a pool. By the way, you'll get the winner, whoever picks the date the closest, will get sharing points for this. And we have yet to talk to you more about sharing points, but go ahead in the chat, send a message with the date, and you could put today if you want, but the actual date in which you think Workday will break through 200. And as you're putting your messages into the chat with your guess as to the date in which Workday stock will break through 200, I just want you to know that I'm somewhat copying from Dave Duffield, who I know at Workday Rising will sometimes in the keynote mention, I think he was calling it the Workday 100 or the Workday 500 or the Workday 1000, but it's the Workday customers who he purchases, pretty sure I could quote him, a significant amount of stock in companies that become Workday customers. And I think the way he says it is, because they're smarter than others, so might as well invest in them. He did not do it at the last Rising, and I'm not sure with 11,000 or more people at Rising every year, this year coming up at Orlando, probably more than 11,000 people going. Maybe he won't do it again, but we're going to have our own little pool to see the day in which Workday breaks. So it has to show there 200 and at least 1 penny to win that pool. Okay, so as the messages are coming in the chat for that, we're ready to get started.
What's next on the agenda?
Up next, we have an ask about position management.
Okay, so this ask here came in to me as a LinkedIn message, and the person who wants to discuss this live will show next week. What we're going to do this week is get your input in the chat, as well as our survey Kahoot. So does anybody out there using position management, using it the way that Workday intended customers to use position management? What do you do also with employees who are terminated or transfer? Is this true position management that you're using, and is it running smoothly? So this is a question that we'd like for people to discuss in the chat. So now you have 2 different topics for the chat. One is, you are using position management, it's it's running smoothly. Here's how you would like to share with others how you're using it. Any comments about it in the chat, and we will discuss it live next week. But we are also going to have a Kahoot question on this, so we could take a survey.
Yeah, let's survey our audience and see what they think.
Right, everyone, it's time for our Kahoot this morning with our survey Kahoot. If you'll go to kahoot.it on your smart device, we will get started.
For those who are first time here at the Sharing Show, just open up kahoot.it in your browser. It could be a computer, it could be a phone.
Okay, our PIN this morning is 80611. You'll put that number in and then it'll ask you for a name. You put in anything you like. We'll wait a couple minutes and then we will get started.
Denise, is this the first time you've seen a Kahoot with only 5 digits as a PIN?
I was thinking that actually. I thought that was kind of weird. Usually we do have 6 digits.
Huh.
It's interesting that they would go down and not go up. All right, here we go. There's 4 questions this morning.
How do you use position management? Okay, so yes, you're using position management. It's smooth and you close positions. Blue is yes, you're using position management. It's smooth, but you leave the positions open. Yellow is you're using position management, not very smooth. Green is none of the above, means maybe you're not using position management or it's not smooth at all. Okay, looks like more than half are using position management and it's smooth. Some not using it, some it's not so smooth. Okay, we will follow this up with chat.
Do you plan to attend Rising 2019 in Orlando? Yes, definitely. Planning on going, but based on approval, undecided, or what is Rising?
What is Rising?
It looks like a lot of people are planning on going, which is awesome. All right, let's go to our next question. What is your favorite part of the sharing show? The shares, the asks, the fun photos or quotes of the week, or the Kahoot?
And that includes this Kahoot question itself.
Awesome, the shares. I voted for the Kahoot. Okay, one more question and then we'll go to our ask. Your thoughts on adding an open microphone session?
All right, let me read this one. 15 minutes after the show, we could do open mic from 9:30 to 9:45. Or before the show starts, this is Pacific time, 8:45 to 9 in the morning. 15 minutes of open mic. Or maybe once a month, we'll just have an open mic show, or Green is just fit it into the agenda, do an open mic at some point, right? So after the show, it looks like a fair number of people, or monthly, a dedicated episode of the sharing show with open mic. All right, so this is David, the Workday sharing guy, and I do a disclaimer on each show. And so what I'm going to do here is we have several guests, so several things to cover today. So just very briefly, I am not currently a Workday employee. I was employee 149 back in 2007. Been doing Workday for 11 years. This is not sponsored by Workday. My views are views of anybody here. We're just customers sharing with each other. We're not representing Workday, so we represent ourselves. This is Share-a-thons and the sharing show. This is all just knowledge sharing. This is not training. I do highly recommend the Workday training.
What's up next, Denise?
Okay, up next, we have some chat answers to last week's ask.
This was an ask from last week, and what I'd like to do is, it was quite active, as it looks like this week's chat also will be, and your chats will make it here next week, likely, depending on if we could squeeze them in and how many comments there are. This show is recorded, so we don't need to cover this. You could go to the YouTube channel and go through this, those who are interested in the Q&A from last week.
Okay, up next, a custom field ask with our special guest, Charlene from California.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Charlene.
I have a need for a custom field that's effective dated, hopefully. We have had a change that we need to do a step in the recruiting process It's kind of a background check, and it would have some statuses as it's showing on the screen. And we need to have it as part of the BP. It has to be done before the offer goes out. I'm not finding anything that can be effective dated yet. And ideally, it would be on the candidate, not as part of any of the requirements on the job requisition. There's no position restriction or anything on it. It's just a step that we have to do. It's kind of like the background check. So my question is, even though I've done some work with using custom fields and objects, I've never created one. So where do I start?
All right, so let's help out Charlene with comments in the chat. I'm seeing some good comments pop up already. So go ahead. Let's move over to chat. And Charlene, if you've seen anything quickly, did you want to, while you have the microphone?
Yeah, just real quickly, we want to execute the step in the job application process and recruiting after interview and before offer.
Okay, and you know what, Charlene, if there's time, we might practice what we were talking about here, which is an open mic towards the end. So stay tuned. Maybe you'll come back here and we could open up your mic again to discuss the progress from the chat.
Great.
And I just want to remind everyone to set the chat to everyone. It would make me so happy to see all of you interacting. And thank you, Charlene, for your ask. And now we have Jen from Texas with a share.
Hello. So one of the things that we ran into with the delivered all jobs was that with it splitting out the historical, current, and future is that the data is showing for historical and the data showing for future was showing the data as of today, not as of the future date. And so we decided to create our own all jobs to show active, future, and past. And we did that with a series of calc fields. And so what we ended up doing, just kind of an overall, is to be able to show all of the data. We created a specific calc field to look up the date and then a series of calc fields to look up all the values by that date. So if we to look more at the calc field, so what we ended up doing is there are pretty much 3 different dates that it could be. We either use today's value for if it's active today, and that's what we set as default. We use the vacate date if the position's ended and the future fill date if it is in the future. And then that calc field we reuse on all of our attributes to look up the values as of that date. And so far that's been working pretty well. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Jen. If I go back to this slide with the yellow highlighted, are you highlighting here in yellow just a ton of different calc fields?
Yeah, those are all the different attributes that we are looking up as of a date, because those are the ones that we found by default bring you today's date, which if it's an ended position or a future position, depending on your data source, returns blank, which was not helpful.
Okay, all right, this is interesting. Often if you have several calc fields in reports, you might see that there's ways to tune the performance. Is it running quickly or quickly enough?
It is running pretty quickly because the data source we're using is worker from prompt. So it's only returning jobs for one worker.
Got it.
So
okay.
it is pretty efficient. We are looking at a way to be able to run this by supervisory org. And so far I am running into performance issues. So that is my next thing to tackle, is to run it by soup org.
Well, you know, while you have the microphone, you could turn this into an ask, but I could go ahead and share an answer. If you don't know about indexing, it's something we'll cover in next show.
The thing we've had with indexing is the availability of fields for filtering.
Got it. Okay, well, Jen, I will discuss with you maybe between now and next week's show, because
Sure.
I would like to focus on the indexing feature in next week's show.
Sure. And I will try to get this up on Workday Community.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to look at our fun photo of the week with Charlene.
Welcome back, Charlene.
Thanks very much. I apparently am collecting mugs, and Workday in the beginning gave mugs with customer on it with the customer number, and I've been lucky enough to do 4 implementations. So I'm with customer 4, a pseudo customer I guessed at 714. That implementation was actually through an authorized reseller of Workday, and they did not, believe it or not, they did not do the mugs. And I brought them up. I brought it up to the implementation manager saying, you should give out the mugs because Workday does. And with some of my contacts at Workday, I said, what number are you on? And I'll just take a guess. And then I've done 2 other implementations that I get the mugs for. And apparently now where I am at 2358, they've dropped the word customer on the mug, but it is for customers. And the little button that's on the bottom that has the heart on it was just a pin that I had in one of the mugs, actually. It's I Heart Workday Rising.
Charlotte, now that I'm taking a closer look at this picture, not only does the mug on the top not have the word customer on it, it looks like it's shorter and a different color.
It's a little bit shorter, about, I'll say a half an inch maybe. And it could be just the lighting between the flash and the incandescent bulb.
Oh, got it. Okay. And while you have the microphone, do you want to share the customer number of the middle of those 3 on the bottom?
Oh, I think it's 714. That's my makeup number of the authorized reseller implementation. So I've been at number 4, number 714, fake one, 1159, and now at 2358.
Wow. Okay. Now, I don't know, Charlene, if you're watching the chat, but lots of people are talking about mugs. In one future show, I will talk about or share a fun photo of a special mug that I have with a special customer who's my mug mate. So I'm going to save that for the future. Thank you, Charlene, for your second share today.
You're very welcome.
Now for our Google search of the week.
I did a search for the Sharing Show Workday, and Google on my computer has this people also ask. So how do I share a Workday report came up? And for some reason, it caught my eye. I think it's not just because of the word share, which is one of my favorite words, but it says now to answer it, to schedule a Workday report, follow the steps. I'm not going to read these steps, but let's just say that the Google search people also ask Q&A did not do a good job here. They misunderstood the question, it seems. Google's usually pretty accurate, but anyway, instead of telling us how to share a report, they tell us how to schedule a report. What I was happy about next, well, I don't know, happy, but I got this question: was this answer helpful? Well, it wasn't really a good answer. No, it wasn't helpful. And then I laughed when I noticed, for some reason, there's a, Oracle is down here. That was not helpful. Okay, so that was just a very quick Google search of the week. Feel free to submit to us not only fortune cookie of the week, which means you take a picture of the fortune of a fortune cookie, shares, asks, photos of the week, and now also a Google search of the week.
Now it's time for a share from David.
Well, hi, everyone. This is David, the Workday Sharing Guy again. I feel like I have the microphone quite a lot today, but we are getting close to the end, and this is something that came up last week. Somebody wanted help with calc fields. We rushed pretty much last week. I'm not so sure we answered the questions or helped the person, so let's just make sure it's very clear to everyone that all fields have a type. And so let's talk about what lookup related value is, because the person said they were having problems with lookup, which I assume is lookup related value. So if you don't get distracted by this, I'll go pretty fast. There's all these different fields. Self-referencing came up as a Kahoot question recently, but let's just look at text, number, date, true, false, single instance, and multi-instance. Well, why does Workday have these types? And actually, if you just looked at numbers, dates, text, even true, false, yes or blank, or yes or no, they all show on your screen as text. So why do these things actually exist as data types? Feel free to answer in the chat. I'll give you just a few seconds to do that as I'm going to preview lookup related value. Lookup related value is tied to the bottom two of these, the single instance and the multi-instance. But there's a special rule on lookup related value. You can't do a lookup related value on a multi-instance. You could do a lookup related value only on a single instance. So that brings up another interesting pattern in calc fields. But let's assume that you have a single instance. We're going to talk about lookup related value, but first let's just make sure people understand why, what value is there to know that something's a number or a date instead of just text. For sure, it's text on your screen. If you copy and paste it, when you look at it on your screen, it's just text. The answer is to offer functions on the data. So for example, let's say you want to know the difference between two dates. So here we have a hire date and a date of birth. If it was just text, you would not be able to easily determine how many days there were in between, or maybe even months and years. Sometimes it gets quite complicated with dates. A challenge question here could be, calculate somebody's age at hire. How would you calculate someone's age at hire? Well, Workday knows when somebody's been hired. Workday can tell you how old somebody is, but Workday doesn't have something which is called age at hire. Maybe you'd like to have that. Let's do another challenge, which is the month that an employee's been hired, either before or after their manager. This was shown last week. We have here a report on a worker and then also their manager level 1, and we're showing the hire date for both. So how would we know the difference between those? Notice that that manager level 1 is a single instance. So there's a date difference calc field, and here's the hire date. Now, this is not going on a report. This is just a calc field, and it's going to tell you the date difference between an employee and their manager in number of months, for example. So now we have to go to the end date, and we're trying to find the hire date on the manager. But you can't do that because it's one level away. So how do you go about doing that? So there's kind of a leap to get to understanding this part of it. We're on the worker, we have this calc field. We need that manager level 1 hire date. We need that to be on the worker. And that's where LRV comes in. In future shows, we'll talk about not just manager, but also dependents. So that might have gone too fast. I know people might get distracted, so I want to just go quick and make sure people are not getting distracted as they go through this. These slides are available, of course, on the YouTube channel. And let's go to the question now that was asked last week. I need help with finance calculated fields, and I struggle with lookups. From my view, whether you're using Workday Student, Finance, HCM, which includes recruiting, but I think of recruiting as a separate thing in a way, knowing what a lookup related value is and how the objects are tied doesn't mean you need to know financials, student, recruiting. You need to know that, what I just covered in calc fields. So hopefully that's helping. The important acronym there is lookup related value, or LRV.
All right, it's time to see who will make the podium this week. Okay, so we're going to do our quiz Kahoot next. You'll go back to kahoot.it. You will have to refresh your screen and put in a new pin. and then we can do our quiz. All right, your pin for this quiz is 27531.
Denise, do you think they've changed Kahoot so now it's only 5 digits?
I guess so. It's interesting, huh?
All right, let's give people plenty of time to join. You do get sharing points if you make it to the podium. All right, we're up over 40.
Okay, there's 4 questions, and there is a right and wrong answer.
Scheduling a report for a coworker is the same as sharing the report. Requires confirmation for security reasons. Can be scheduled for any second of any date. Or it's a bad idea. You should avoid scheduling a report for a coworker. A lot of people got this, and that kudos to you who knew that in advance. I forgot to mention this aspect of it earlier on the Google search share, or the Google search of the week. Charlene, you're in the lead, and closely behind you, Joe, and then Callie, Charlie, and PH. An LRV calc field will look up a related value from self-referencing VO, copy a value from an RVO, look up a value from a relative named Victor, copy a value from a relative named Victoria. So even though it's called lookup related value, it's going to copy a value. So you're copying a value from a related business object onto an object. It does not have to be a self-referencing business object. That might have been worded kind of tricky, but Charlie is now in the lead, Chris M in second. Welcome back, Chris M. Vanessa, Jack M, and Tom H. An LVD calc field will, we saw this earlier today, look up a value as of date, look up a value from an RVO, look up a Victoria in Denmark, look up the Victor Victoria director. If you're getting the sense of humor here, this one hopefully is pretty straightforward. It does a lookup value as of date. And LRV is the one that does a lookup value from an RVO. Charlie, you're in the lead. Jack M and Tom H. Chris M, you might make the podium, you're close. And Beth B. I'm mentioning Chris M because I recognize he's been on the podium before. I think we have one final question. USA Rising Conference in October is in Orlando, in Las Vegas, in Chicago, in Tony Orlando's birth city. Okay, everyone seemed to get that. It might have been a race to see how quickly you got it. On the podium, Charlie, your first place, second place, Jack M, Tom H. Total point difference, only 250 or so between you, 260. So congratulations, everyone who made it to the podium. Charlene, I think, well, we're sort of out of time. I'm just gonna have you go an extra minute if you can grab the mic and just say something here before Kane wraps us up. Did you get some good help in the chat?
I did. Thank you very much. For some reason, we're not using the background check, and so maybe I can use that spot. And I certainly appreciate the input from everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, and next week, if you plan for it, we might go 15 minutes extra at the end of open mic time. We will be in touch to confirm that will happen. So next week at this time, we would end the show and then do open mic for 15 minutes. Okay, Kane, we're wrapped.
Excellent. Thank you, David, and thank you, everybody else. Thank you, Denise, Logan, and special thanks to our guests today for sharing on the show and their asks as well. As David mentioned, we will publish this to our YouTube channel, and you can also go there and subscribe and get notifications when that happens. We're really pleased that you could make it today, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. So all that's left to say is have a great workday.